Hello all. I'm Amit Bhave and I'm from CMCL. As Simon said, I shouldn't use too many acronyms. So CMCL, first of all, stands for Computational Modeling Cambridge Limited. First of all, thanks to the team at DT Hub for this opportunity to present at today's Gemini Call. Today, in line with the release of a new video on the technical showcase from CMCL, I'm going to provide a brief technical overview of CReDo. CReDo, a climate resilience demonstrator, is a connected digital twin, and the team at CMCL led the technical development and implementation of several parts of CReDo. At CMCL, our mission is to enable cross-domain interoperability. CReDo is a climate change adaptation digital twin designed to address the cascading risks across infrastructure networks, as highlighted by the Joint Commission on the National Security Strategy. It brings together data across different networks such as energy, water, telecoms, and hospital infrastructure, together with flood data and scenarios to help us understand, mainly the infrastructure interdependencies, as well as the asset failure and combined impact across systems or networks. So the question is, how do we increase system resilience and adapt to climate change? To address this question, within CReDo, we adopt a network of networks or a system of systems approach. Today, I would like to touch upon the following three aspects: the data structures that we have employed, the adoption of distributed architecture and the technical solution implemented, and a very short use case given the time via the CReDo visualization. So let's look at the data structures. The internal data structure used by CReDo is based on a hierarchy of simple ontologies. Ontology is a formal representation of the knowledge and concepts within a specific domain or a field in a structured and machine-readable format or way. At the top of the hierarchy, we define concepts and relationships about asset and flood data that apply through CReDo. The slide here illustrates some of the main concepts and relationships. The concepts are the nodes, and the relationships are the arrows in the diagram. An asset will have an owner and a set of properties describing the flood, the operational state of the asset, and its location, for example. An asset may also supply something, for example, power to another asset, represented by this inward arrow. When we use these as based on the ontologies and the internal data structures explained, we represent the data that's entailed from cross-sector in the form of a directed graph. The instances of the concepts, in this case, the assets, from the nodes of the graph, while the relationships between the concepts, in this case, supplies relationships mainly, form the arrows between the nodes. And this is the basis of how we form the CReDo knowledge graph. This is again reflected in the connectivity of the assets on the CReDo visualization as displayed here. In CReDo, we also use computational agents that operate on the knowledge graph. They're also part of the knowledge graph, and they are used to describe the response of each asset to, in this case, the flooding as a risk, and to resolve the cascade of failures throughout the combined network. Thus, we can interoperate across the instances, i.e., enable interoperability from data from different networks. The diagram here shows the distributed architecture. Starting on the left-hand side, the asset owner data is hosted securely on separate servers. This specific service in this project is provided by STFC, a partner within CReDo, using the Daphne infrastructure. Each server runs a separate visualization, providing a means to facilitate different views of the insights and data. In the middle of the diagram, a central node is responsible for resolving the connectivity between assets, simulating asset failures and the impact across the combined network, and finally for managing scenarios, for example, which combinations of climate and asset data are analyzed. On the right-hand side of the diagram, we connect to data and service providers. An example of this is the climate projection and flood models. In this case, the flood data coming from Fathom in phase 2 of CReDo. The other models, which, for example, can be the economic consequences of a scenario and models for recommending possible actions to improve resilience. And lastly, the other data sources, in this case, includes the NHS infrastructure data. The vision of an extensible system where multiple providers can offer models as well as data is being built here. And this is very much aligned with the vision of the ecosystem distributed architecture, thus enabling a shared understanding across various sectors, such as transport, health, manufacturing as well. Let's consider a weather event, such as a flood that has compromised assets from the energy network. This can in turn have a knock-on impact on the other sectors. The other networks, however, may not be aware that they are vulnerable to this cascading risk. Thus, by analyzing shared data, we develop a connected understanding of the overall system. In the event of a suitable data sharing agreement, that allows connections to all servers. It is then possible to retrieve the system-wide view of the overall connected infrastructure network, including new asset owners, for example, the critical health infrastructure, in this case, shown via the NHS data. The system-wide view may be useful to asset owners and regulators alike. So here is a snapshot of the CReDo visualization. The red rings around the assets denote direct failure due to flooding, and the orange rings in this case indicate indirect failures, that is due to interdependency of the assets. Different types of flooding, as you can see on the right in the menu, have been taken into account: pluvial, fluvial, coastal, etc. So let's consider a scenario where the power, water, telecoms, and health infrastructure experience a 1 in 1,000 year flood event. On selecting a failed asset site, additional data regarding the location of the asset, the flood state of the asset, the state of connections, and connectivity of the asset, these are all displayed to the user of CReDo. For example, in the area highlighted here, the primary substation supplies power to 2 NHS hospitals in this region. One of the hospitals, marked by a red circle at the bottom right, has directly failed due to flood and lost power and telephone service. The second hospital has not flooded, but it's experiencing indirect failure as a result of cascade of failures. An alternative scenario suggesting investments to improve the resilience of the power substation shows an option to avoid the loss of power to both hospitals. CReDo also offers an analytics dashboard that derives and summarizes information across multiple scenarios, providing a simple view of complex information to support decision-making. Examples include a list of assets with highest vulnerability and economic information regarding potential interventions. I would like to acknowledge the partners and contributors to the multiple phases of CReDo. CReDo, as a team, we continue to learn as we go along this exciting journey in extending CReDo to other assets, other sectors, and other weather events, such as extreme heat, for example. So thank you once again for your attention, and thank you to DT Hub for the invitation.
So Amit, our first question is to yourself here, which says, are there any other effects from climate change aside from flooding that you're looking at? For example, high winds.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thank you for the question. So within CReDo current phases, we have focused on flooding and different types of floods. The issues regarding extreme heat or high winds and other aspects will be looked at in the sort of the ensuing follow-up projects that we are starting in the collaborative sense. And this is very much on cards, but yeah, we haven't done that work yet. So, but this is, I think, the use of ontologies and enabling interoperability in a way enables us to look at and extend the work to these extreme events, knowing that extreme winds or extreme heat will affect the assets in quite different ways, and failure models will differ as well. So this is a lot of work, but yet to happen.
Brilliant, thank you. Linked question here, if I could, Amit, is your assets appear geographically discrete, but assets, surely including pipes and wires, aren't discrete in this manner and could be partly compromised. How are you handling this in the system?
Good question. Indeed, they do, and the pipes and wires or any other are treated just like any other assets that have been shown. So they will have their own failure models, and this is certainly accounted for in CReDo.
Amit, what stage is CReDo at in terms of informing resilience investment? Have any organisations made an investment in assets identified via CReDo to improve their resilience?
Thanks for the question, Dan. So as you know, or you may be aware that the current phase of CReDo, for example, supported by Frontier Economics, they have done the investment case and the study within the current phase of CReDo. The project that has just started, the Ofwat innovation project, we will be looking specifically at these aspects of investment resilience and focusing on the investment side. So in the current phase, no, but in the near future, this is exactly the plan for the Ofwat innovation project. And the key focus, in addition to Frontier's work, was to demonstrate CReDo as a proof of concept, which is what we have been focusing upon.
Very good, thank you. And the final question to you both, I'll come to Amit, you first, and then to yourself, Andy, is how do you handle data sharing between parties and partners in your digital twins?
So I would answer this. This is a very tough question, a very good question. I won't go into the legal aspects of the data sharing agreements because that's not what CMCL has focused on in this case. But CReDo as a team have a lot of deep expertise in legal templates for data sharing agreements across partners. The way we have handled this, as I think put in the data structure slide, the internal data structure slide, is the use of ontologies, which means we have a hierarchy of ontologies, and on an application level or on an individual sector level, based on a partner's specific knowledge and expertise, we have the ontologies specific to that domain or specific to that application, and thereby we have, I think there was another question on interoperability as well. Thereby we have a one code structure which is pretty modular that handles different partners, and on the data side, the data is very much in a distributed fashion, so that the partners retain the control of their own data set, and depends on the interparty or interpartner legal agreements in terms of the need to know access to data.